Good day to MFSQL Connector. We are working through the continuation of a series on practical examples. If you have not already done that, then I suggest that you look at the introduction to this series as well as the first session on getting started. We are working through the examples, and in this session we will look at metadata structure changes. In the examples for the metadata structure changes, we will talk about the iterative process of working through structure changes of the metadata. We will make a change in the structure in M files and see how that reflects in SQL. We will also talk about different types of changes that can be made in SQL to the metadata structure that doesn't affect M files and support an integration project. We will also then make those changes and look at the impact of those changes, and finally update all of the changes and show you the different procedures that can be used to do those changes. Let's get started. We're going to focus on metadata structure. So let's open MFSQL Connector, and I just would like to emphasize that the synchronizing the metadata structure from M files into SQL is at the heart of the connector, because as I've indicated in the previous session, that what the installation of the connector does, it creates a number of tables that is related to the structure, and the structure of M files allows the connector to create the class tables, to maintain the rules of M files, and to effectively allow us to interact with M files in a way that we would like to basically build and structure the integration with between the two systems. So let me open my script for this session, which is 01105 from the package, and again to emphasize that these scripts are available to you for download so that you can actually use them to do your own practice. So synchronizing the metadata is very often a very iterative process while you are putting the integration package together and while you are building it, because effectively you may find that the vault structure that is currently in the vault need to be updated. You may find that while you're busy with the integration, you need to make changes both in the vault as well as in terms of the coding to actually make everything work. And therefore, this is a very iterative process to look at the class, to make an update to the class, and then to get the new properties or to take properties away, to change the rules of the properties, to transition the data. All of those type of things happens during the design process in terms of how do you use all of these procedures from a SQL end so that you can work with the structure in M files. So there's various ways that the structure can change. The structure can change in M files, and that is, we are all very used to that. We create a new class, we create a new property, we change the properties around. All of those type of things can take place in M files during the design phase. There are also custom changes that we can make in SQL that is specifically designed in terms of how we want the integration to work with the third-party systems. And then also we can use SQL to make some of the changes in M files back in M files. So there is different ways that we can work with it. And while we are doing that, we need to keep both M files and SQL in synchronization, and there are different methods to effectively achieve that. I have introduced to you the first method, the execute SPMF synchronize metadata. This method is usually used only at the beginning, for a first initialization of the metadata, as we have had in the first session. I'm not going to execute this procedure at the moment because it takes a few minutes to run. I'm just talking through that. If you continue working with the metadata, you would rather use the SPMF drop and update metadata procedure, which is this procedure. And we're going to use this in the session several times to actually illustrate the different ways of using this procedure. But there's also a third category of update procedures that you can use to synchronize the metadata, and that is SPMF synchronize specific metadata. And this is where you've made a change to a particular element. Maybe it's just a value list that you've changed, or maybe it's just a property that you've changed, and you just want to pull that through, and therefore you can actually just execute SPMF synchronize metadata, a specific metadata, and with the type like class or property or value list items, workflow, you can use all of those terms to effectively specify which specific metadata you want to synchronize. I would actually like to warn that when you use this, but the change that you've made in M files actually affects more than one element. So for instance, if you add a property and you add that property to the class, it's not only the property that will change, but also the class. And therefore, if you do want to use synchronize specific metadata, then you need to update both class and property, or alternatively, you just use execute SP drop and update metadata, which will deal with all of the structural changes that you have taken place. So when you make a change to the metadata in M files, and let me go to M files, just like any other change that you would make, we go into the customer, we want to add a property to the table. Let's say we want to add state or province, and add the item. Item has been added. We've finished with whatever updates we are making in M files, whether it is new properties, changes of properties, new classes, deletions of classes, value list items, workflows, any structural changes that you make. Once you have made those changes, and you can make a lot of changes and then go in and do the refresh of, from a SQL perspective, basically you then just run the execute, drop and update metadata, and that procedure will run through and update the metadata from M files into SQL, and you have your new structure. It could take somewhere between a minute or a minute and a half for the structure to refresh, and here you can see the process has been completed. The one table that forms the heart of the structure is MF class. So let's look again at it. We did look at it at a previous occasion, but this table effectively have a listing of all of the classes included in the vault that we are looking at. The class table is actually a very important table, and you will work with that a lot by looking at it, getting information from it, using the information in the table to perform actions, and so forth. When we talk about properties and classes, there is a special table in the connector called MF class property, and here you can see the name of the table. This table contains the connection between the class and the property, and the join is done on the ID of the class and the ID of the property. So if I can illustrate that and give you a select statement on that join, then here we can see class, customer, and all of the properties that is associated with it. When I look at the value lists, so value lists and value list items are connected again through the MF value list ID. And if I effectively go and do a select statement on the value lists and value list items, then and in this case, I've actually done it for the value list country. Similar to what we've just said, is that workflow and workflow states is joined together. And again, if you basically look at this statement, then this will actually show you the join again on the ID for the workflow and the workflow items for, in this case, for the processing job applications workflow. MFSQL Connector actually provides very powerful capabilities in terms of exploring the metadata structure. To that end, we've created a special view called the MF View Metadata Structure that combines the metadata from different dimensions into a single view and allows the developer to use it to explore different scenarios. To illustrate, here is a view that would show all of the structure elements that is related to customer. So if we execute that, then we can see all of the properties, the aliases, everything associated with properties. We can identify further requirements with regard to the properties in terms of, is it predefined, is it required? We can see its relationship to value lists, and we also can see its relationship with workflows. And in this case, there are no particular workflow involved in customer. However, if I want to look, for instance, and see where in the metadata structure is a property used that looks like a customer. So if I basically do that selection, I can see that, first of all, there is a number of different instances of a property, customer, name, customer, customers in its different forms. I can see it is being used in a variety of different classes where the different properties are being used. So, for instance, customers are being used in several of the different classes, although the customer is being used only in sites. And if I look at the data types, for instance, I can see the related data type of those particular properties. I can also, again, review the workflow relationship, its object types, and so if I take a different example and I say, I want to actually go and look where is the value list country being used, and I, for instance, pull that out, I can basically see that the value list is used on two classes, on the customer and the vendor, and this is the related property. And just as a final sort of dimension, if I want to go and say where is workflow, a particular workflow being used on classes, where is it being specified in classes, and here I can see that the workflow processing job applications is used on this particular class. Now, in the sample vault, the different elements and complexity is actually not very advanced. If you're sitting with a vault that have a high volume of different relationships and different uses of properties on in different areas, then it is very tough in the administrator module to get a holistic view of the structure And this particular view and the tables underlying it can actually provide you with a very powerful mechanism to analyze the structure. We've come to the end of the session on metadata structure changes. This session introduced the different ways in which the structure can change, as well as the relationship between the different structured tables and also the different ways that a structure can be analyzed using some of the views that has already been created, and also the different tables that is available for further analysis to understand and digest the structure that a vault may have, so that you can plan the development and you can reorganize anything that need to be reorganized to tidy up the vault and to develop the vault further. The next session will go in more detail in terms of making structure changes using SQL as the source of the change.